So thank you so much to my beautiful friends, Steph, Cence.
Wow.
How are you, my love?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for chatting with me. I always love
Oh,
talking to you.
well, I just thought it was a really great time for us to have a chat because you live in LA and
Mm-hmm.
you've been over, right in the heart of where, all the stuff's been going on over the last couple of weeks, as well as
Yeah.
with COVID and everything else. And you're such a good friend of mine. I thought it would be really beautiful for us to have a chat about your insights around, being someone of color who, not only experiences, certain
Yeah.
situations, but you've also have a family and you have friends and all that sort of
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
and your own experiences. So I'd love to have a chat with you about all of that. And also, I think we talked about specifically focusing on mental health within the Black community, and
Yeah.
just I think I just want to get all your insights because it's your, as you said, it's your life, and it's really important that we have these conversations. So. And you've
Yeah.
mentioned recently that you've had some meetings and things like that. So I'll let you take over and share
Yeah.
with us.
So as I explained to you before, I feel like obviously everybody is affected by what's going on in the world right now, and this movement that is forcing everyone to reckon with their own beliefs and understandings, and it's making this world change. And I was trying to I think we're all trying to figure out what we can do, and I was saying I'm not necessarily the person that's going to go out and protest and get hit by rubber bullets, and I'm so grateful for the people that are willing to risk themselves in that way. But I feel like everybody has a way that they can do something or affect change, however big or however small. And so I really started thinking about me and my life and my experiences and how I could maybe affect some change. And one of my girlfriends, she is leading this foundation that is focused on, unseating DAs that are, corrupt, and, defunding the police. And I joined one of the meetings of one of the DAs that are running in LA here against Jackie Lacey. And he had some great ideas in terms of police reform. And one of the things though, for me personally, that came up was the idea of defunding the police. And I think a lot of people misunderstand that statement. And they think it means don't have police, but it really doesn't. I mean, police are way, way overfunded, and a lot of the money that goes to them could be redirected to community resources and people that are better equipped to deal with certain things like homelessness and mental illness and domestic violence. And so, the police are this kind of catch-all thing. Whereas if we spread out the resources to the right organizations and the right people, then we are able to treat things from a social angle, and rather than from this idea of being policed. And I think that I have a daughter that has mental illness, so I've gone through the whole system here, and I think there's a real lack of resources in the Black community specifically for adults, but particularly for children. So my daughter was in and out of facilities, and a lot of the facilities here, there's rules where you can't have more than 6 beds. And so you'd have thousands of kids that need help, mental health inpatient treatment, and 6 beds. And I was her constant advocate. Like, I was 24/7 advocating, fighting with insurance companies, fighting with, hospitals and facilities to keep her in the running for these beds. And the one thing that I noticed looking back on it is that there were never any Black kids in these programs. Never. Like, Heaven was always the only Black child.
Why do you think
And
that is?
because there's 2 things that I think. There's one where I think that these resources aren't made available to the Black community. They aren't made available to the Black community. A lot of them don't. I did a lot of my own research, but what happens, I think, because there's such a criminalization of mental health in this country. For example, like I told you, one time my daughter tried to kill herself, and instead of coming and treating her with compassion, they arrest her and take her to a state-run facility. Now, if you don't know better, you think that they have to stay in that state-run facility that is essentially a jail. It's a hospital jail, and they treat the kids like they're in jail. They talk to them like they're prisoners, not patients. There's no compassion, there's no care. And you know, so I think because there's a lack of education and resources in the Black community about what is available and what is out there, and there's not enough advocacy in that community for mental health treatment, and you have to literally fight for those positions. There's no one fighting for the Black community when it comes to mental health. So they just take what they can get, or they get nothing. And also there's this sense of, I think there's a sense of in the Black community, there's almost like a stigma about mental health. And I can't speak to all of the whole Black community, but I guarantee it has something to do with the idea of not wanting to have another label on you. You're already Black and you're already at a disadvantage, and then you're crazy on top of it, and no one wants that for their kids. And so they're already battling with this idea that being Black is you're a lower class citizen when you're Black. They're battling against that idea because of systematic racism in this country. So they don't want to then add another layer for their children of saying they have ADD, or they have mental illness, or they're bipolar, or whatever. And so in the Black community, they don't really seek out or talk about mental health at all. It's not a discussion around the kitchen table. So I think it's twofold. It's like they're not seeking it out, and it's not being made readily available to the Black community. And so, you know, and then again, because they criminalize mental health, and so if their police are the ones showing up, where do the kids go? Juvenile hall. So now once you're in this track of being, you know, a criminal, then you get out, then it's a cycle. How do you get out of that cycle? You don't. Now
that's the cycle we're seeing, isn't it? That's
horrible. Exactly what you're seeing. And it starts from, a lot of it stems from lack of mental health, and these resources that if we made them available to kids at a younger age that are struggling or having issues or need medication or have imbalances, they wouldn't be criminalized. But because the police are the catch-all for everything to do with society, how do they deal with it? They police people. So if you show up because you're having a mental breakdown, and I'm talking about self-harm, not even harm to other people, self-harm situations, the police come in and they arrest you, and they literally handcuff you and take you off. And so for someone who's already dealing with mental health issues, that does not help. And then, you know, putting them in juvenile hall systems or as adults in jail because they have mental health issues, again, that's what leads to this over incarceration, this idea of over mass incarceration, is that they're criminalizing people for things that are society failures. You know, these people are sick. They need help. Like if they had cancer, can you imagine you had cancer and someone came to your house and arrested you because you had cancer and put you in jail? Like that's what we're doing to people and kids with mental health. And I've seen it. And as a mother, it breaks your heart to see your child go off in handcuffs. But you know that's the only option because you can't help them. I can't stop her from having a meltdown when she starts. So only option I have is to let the police take her. There's no other option. Because the other thing is that if they don't come in through the police, they usually don't get a bed because it's not considered a medical necessity, or a medical emergency. And so they have this system set up that's so intertwined with policing that doesn't need to be. Obviously, if they're having such a breakdown mentally where they're a risk to other people, there has to be some control in terms of a police, but it should be a two-pronged thing. Police shouldn't show up to these situations alone because they're not equipped to deal with mental health crises. You know, there's therapists and there's social workers and there's psychiatrists. There's people that go to school for years to handle these kind of situations, and we're expecting police to come in and handle those situations the same way you would handle a murderer or a rapist or you know what I mean? And so for me, I'm super passionate about the idea of advocating for mental health resources in the Black community, particularly with children, because I think, and that we talked about the schools. So the schools get funding for mental health treatment and to do, they call them individual learning plans, where they are required and mandated by the state to adjust, to provide therapy, to provide mental health resources, to provide whatever the child needs to do to be able to get an education. And you can't get an education if your mental health is disrupting your ability to learn, right? So it goes back to the schools. And so again, you have another system, a social system that is there for education, and they're getting money to help kids with mental health issues, and they're not using it for those purposes. And so I was able to advocate for Heaven to go to a live-in facility through the school board, but it took me 2 years of fighting the school board. I'm talking hundreds of papers. Like, I'm not exaggerating.
Wow.
Like, hundreds of papers, redundancy, meetings, therapists, psychiatrists analyzing, my family going through that, social workers getting involved. For them, they make it so hard for you to access resources, and you have to be so persistent to advocate for yourself and your family for like nonstop for years that you get tired. And you got to keep in mind, these parents that are dealing with kids with mental health issues, they're tired.
Yeah.
They're worn out. They are exhausted. They are worried. You know what I mean? And so they don't have the bandwidth to endure all the things that you have to do just to get your child to, you know, the help that they need.
Yeah.
And so that's exasperated in the Black community because a lot, you know, they're already dealing with the disparity of income. So a lot of these Black communities that are the poorer communities, moms, they're, you know, families are working 2-3 jobs to just put food on their table. So do they have time to sit there and fill out hundreds of pages of paperwork or to read that? Or they don't have time. They can't.
No.
They're barely surviving. And so because of that, because, you know, if you look at how the housing worked and how these communities got created and how there's such a, you know, systematic racism that keeps these communities down, anybody that is in a poor community, a community of color that's, you know, has these disparities, they are not going to access these resources that are available. They
Makes
won't.
sense.
And so then you have these kids that are trouble,
Yeah.
getting in trouble in school, getting trouble, and they have police at the schools. Like here in LA, you have a police officer at the school.
Wow.
So, you know, not, you know, and it's like, again, why are they're not there to protect the kids against shooters coming in or something like that. They're there to police the children that are there for an education. So if you need police officers at your school, what is going on?
Yeah.
What is something bigger going on, right? So like, because these are kids that are coming to learn. Yeah. So if they're acting out and fighting or, you know, misbehaving, there's a bigger issue that needs compassion and love. Like, and I think that speaks to the work that you do with this Love for Humanity, because I think we're so used to dealing with every situation in such a, you know, violent way, in such an authoritative way. Like,
I always say it's a way that doesn't work. It just hasn't worked for how many centuries? Like, it's not working.
And compassion.
Yeah.
No compassion, no empathy, no love, no understanding. Like, these are children. Yeah. And you're treating them like they're criminals because they're having mental health issues. Like,
well, they're going to be the result of their own they're going to be the result of what they're seeing. And if this is what they're seeing, they're going to be reacting from that place.
Yeah, exactly. And they're coming, you know, there's some kids coming from broken homes. There's some kids coming, who knows what they're experiencing in their home. And instead of coming to an environment that is loving and full of compassion, that they can be disarmed, they're being criminalized. Okay, so now you're acting up in school. So now you're, you know, instead of saying, okay, well, what is the actual underlying issue that's going on here? What's causing this? Because this behavior doesn't come from nowhere.
So why do you think, you tell me what why you think this is happening?
Why have we decided to be this way as a society, you mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that there's a lot to do with, in this country specifically, I mean, there's a lot to do with greed and money. Yeah. Because if you look, I don't know if you saw that documentary 13th, but it really explains really well one thing. It explains a lot of things, but one thing that's very clear is that the police system and the jail's justice system is based on money. The people that make the laws that go into enacted into law sit on a committee of private citizens and corporations. And some of those corporations are private jails. Like, why are jails private? Why are they for profit? Those should not be a for-profit entity. So the people that make money off of jailing people are the same people that are helping make these laws. And so they have a direct impact on the laws that are being made that also directly impact their ability to earn income. So they have no reason to not want to mass incarcerate people. They actually have motivation to mass incarcerate people. And who is the easiest population to mass incarcerate? Black communities that don't have access to other resources to keep them out of the judicial system, because we're going back to the idea of like these, like I saw this thing on Instagram that was talking about schools, and so like how schools are set up, school systems here. So the schools are funded by property tax, right? So you go to a good neighborhood, they have good schools because the people that live there pay a lot of property tax, and the schools get more income and they have better teachers. And then you go to the schools in the poor neighborhood and they're lacking. And I can tell you this for sure, because again, my daughter, when we moved to LA, we didn't understand like the disparity between neighborhood and neighborhood, because it's really not like that in Canada, especially when it comes to schools. It doesn't matter really where you live. The schools are all the same in terms of resources, same teachers, same amount of kids, like same kind of books. You might find kids that are a little rougher because they're coming from, you know, rough neighborhoods. And
I think we're the same in Australia. Like it's not,
yeah.
I'm surprised it's broken down to communities.
Oh yeah, it's definitely. And so we lived in this really nice neighborhood, and she went to a really good school. But the line of like cutoff where that school district is and the other one was like just a matter of streets.
Wow.
And so you're still in a really nice community, but you don't realize when you move a few streets over, which we did, you drop out of that school district and you go to another school district. Now, the school district that my daughter ended up entering into when we moved, and like really not knowing that's how it works here in LA, and you cannot just go to another school out of your district. You literally could go to jail for it. You're not allowed.
What?
You can't just enroll your kid in another school. So you have to go to the school in your district. So unless you're going to private school and you're paying $40,000 a year, right? So now we've moved a couple streets over, not a bad neighborhood, just a couple streets over, but the way the zoning works, we land in this other school. She starts at the school. There's no teacher in her math class. She doesn't have a teacher. They have a TA that comes in and checks on the kids every 15 minutes. No school books. She had to get photocopies of her lessons from her school books sent home to her. There was massive drugs rampant in the school. The teachers were like despondent. They just like didn't care because they weren't even, they would, at the school, basically they would let the teachers go like there was a certain amount of time that they had to work there in order for them to get benefits and this and that. And they would like cycle through teachers before this would happen. So it was just like, there was a huge difference between the school, a few streets over that we landed in, and then that school. We had to move out of that neighborhood and move back into the other. Then I started getting wise, right? I started only moving to places where I checked the school first. That was the first thing I had to do, was like check what school was in that district. And so you're talking about, you know, these schools, these like subpar education, subpar resources already. So from onset, from kindergarten, these kids are getting less. They're getting less from the very, very beginning.
They got no hope, really. There's no hope.
They're not educated the same way. They're not provided the same opportunities, the same resources. And this is systematic racism that causes that. And then they get a little bit older, and then now they start to act up. And the other thing that my girlfriend was telling me about is that there's a real problem with lead in the schools, in the poor schools. So they've painted these schools with lead paint, and they're actually poisoning the kids and causing disorders like ADD and stuff like that. And so we're literally poisoning our poor Black communities and then jailing them and then criminalizing their mental health issues that are caused by these poisons, and then jailing them and then putting them into this system of, you know, judicial system, and then having no resources for them to actually get out of this system and rehabilitate themselves. And then we have people making the laws that benefit from having these people of color in jail. So it's like this from start to finish.
Didn't you say the percentage is really high of Black people in jail?
I can't remember the exact number. I think it's like 8% of the population is African-American males in the US, and 40%, I think, makes up the jail system. So it's a huge number of, you know, and that's not by accident. That's not by accident, it's by design. And that's why people are saying Black Lives Matter. And when people say all lives matter, yeah, but all lives aren't being systematically oppressed right now. Black lives are, and they haven't been for 400 years. And they are, it's like facts. It's not somebody, you know, just saying it because they think it's unfair or they're poor. It's actually can be proven that there's a system in place in this country and other countries, but particularly this country, that continues to oppress Black people and put them at a disadvantage from a social aspect, economic, every aspect. And for me, the one thing that can break that chain, it's almost like a supply chain, right? And it can break, it's from start to finish. And the thing that can break it for me that I see is having mental health resources at a young age. And not just mental health resources, the work that you do. Because I didn't know all the things about energy and thoughts and your mindset and meditation and how and manifesting. You don't learn that in school. There's a reason why they don't teach that in school when it's the most important thing that you can learn in your whole life. Yeah. Why is that not taught in school? And so I think it's twofold. And I think it could really go back to the schools. Like if we put more money into the school system and they're funded to be able to provide these special services for kids with mental health, and they change the curriculum to include things like meditation and, you know, energy and understanding the mind and the soul and all that stuff, you know, that's such an important part of every person's life.
Yeah.
I think if we start teaching the kids these life skills and these just how to know themselves and learn about themselves and love themselves, and there would be such a shift. Like, I think what we're doing right now is fantastic. I think that people are out there protesting and having a voice and changing, you know, these empirical systems that have gone on and on and on, like police and whatever, but really it comes down to just changing us. And that's the work that you do. And I think you don't see real change until people change themselves. And so we can change the laws and we can change the people out and we can change the rules, but until we change society, it'll just evolve to something else, just like it has over the years. It was segregation, it was slavery, then it was segregation, then it was Jim Crow, and you know, it just like kept evolving into something else, but it didn't change. And we talk about that in our work. Until you learn your lesson here on this earth, things are cyclical, right? And so we got to break this cycle by teaching our kids how to think different.
And I think it's hard because remember you told me about Nico, because we haven't even brought up, you know, you have a son as well while you've been trying to help Heaven. So it's like, you know, poor Nico, who's younger than Heaven, you know, kind of had, you know, was in the background. But I remember one time you said his hair was growing longer and it was into an afro and you had to tell him to cut it.
Yeah, I think that's so, and for me, again, I'm speaking where I haven't had those experiences where I've gone out and been accosted by the police or anything like that. And so my experience as a Black or minority individual has not been that of, you know, Black men here in this country. So I'm not by any means trying to compare, but as a mother, you know, you're just like, well, you might as well just get your hair cut. Why take the extra chance? But you shouldn't even have to think like that as a mom. Like you shouldn't even have to think like that, but you do in this country. And, you know, I think that it's a terrible, terrible thing. And we almost get desensitized to it because we get so overloaded with information that it's almost like, oh yeah. The other thing I think that there's a real thing that we have to talk about is Black women. Specifically Black women, because while Black Lives Matter and this movement is fantastic and it's great, it's all, you know, and it's sparked off from George Floyd, Breonna Taylor was murdered 2 weeks before, no, not 2 weeks, in March, I think, right? 2 months before, in her bed when she was sleeping. And there wasn't as much of an outcry. And I think there's a disparity for Black women too. Like, I know that for a fact when it comes to business. I sit around boardroom tables all the time, and I am always the only Black. I'm usually the only woman. If I'm not the only woman, I am definitely the only Black woman. There is rare. I can count on one hand the amount of times I've been in an important boardroom where there's been a Black woman there. And so, and even when I have been there, I always have to fight to be considered equal. I always have to stand up for myself and speak out because I'm always kind of, by default, put into this category of like, oh, she's an assistant, or she's, you know, I have a friend, he's a really good friend of mine, and he's a great person, and he would tell people I was his assistant, and I would be like, can you stop telling people I'm your assistant, I'm your partner? He's like, oh, that was an accident. Oh, would you accidentally tell that white man over there that he was your assistant? You wouldn't do that. And so that's the other thing, is like, I think the one thing, not the problem, but in this whole movement of Black Lives Matter, and we just came off the Me Too movement, which was the female movement. I think that we always have to take a back seat as women. Like whatever is going on in the world always it's usually carried on the shoulders of women. It's usually women. Who started Black Lives Movement? A woman. It's usually the women that carry anything and enact any real change behind the scenes, usually not getting credit for it. And our personal agendas have to get put to the side. So it's like, we can't talk about, equal pay right now. We can't talk about the Me Too movement right now. Because we need to focus on Black Lives Matter. But Black women matter. And I think for the second thing that for me that I want to focus on in terms of advocacy and awareness and things that I can do in this climate is really figure out a way to make Black women have a platform, because I think it's disproportionate. If you think Black and white is disproportionate, compare Black women and white and it's like 10 times more disproportionate in terms of roles, corporate roles, in terms of resources, in terms of money, in terms of anything to do with any of the stats that you would compare. And I haven't done this, and I'm gonna go and do it actually. And if you compare just Black to white or Black to other communities, if you narrow it down to Black women, it's probably 10 times worse, And so I think in this society, just women have always had to kind of just be caregivers and just always give up. I feel like just women are expected to give up things that are their priorities to focus on other things for the greater good. And I think there has to be an underlying message in all of this, is that Black women matter, Black lives matter, but Black women matter. And something specific that brings up that part of the community, because we can, obviously, if we stop this police brutality, and we need to stop all of that. That's, there's big agendas that need to happen. There's a big shift, defunding the police, all of these things. There's these huge things, but there's things that specifically need to happen for Black women to even out the opportunities, just specifically financially, even when it comes to business, small businesses, and, getting loans as a Black woman. Getting funding for a business as a Black woman is so difficult. The way I get funding for businesses is by getting a white partner, getting a male white partner.
Are you
That's
serious?
How I get funding for businesses. I've never got funding for a thing or an idea of mine just on my own merit. I usually have to bring in a white person or a white man, ideally, and that's how I'll get funding. And like my company that I'm doing right now, I have a white man as my partner, because I know that's what's going to get me the funding. It's going to be 10 times harder for me to get funding, just me on my own, even though I'm smarter, even though I'm capable, even though I have all the credentials, the ability, everything like that. They don't see it. They don't, and I had, I literally, so it's like, as a woman, I experienced that. As a woman of color, I experienced that even more. And I think that needs to be said. So I would love to start some kind of foundation or some kind of organization that helps women of color get funding, start businesses, pursue their dreams. Because I think in general, women of color there's this idea where you have to sacrifice, and that's what makes you a good mom. And that's what makes you, you just have to sacrifice what you want, and you have to provide. And that's your job as a Black mom. And there's not this idea of, or this community that uplifts Black women specifically. And I think that that's an important part of this whole thing that we can't forget, is that yes, all Black lives matter, but there's Black women and then there's Black men. And there's still that. So if you think that Black men have it hard, which they do, because they're literally hunted in the street right now by police, can you imagine these Black mothers, like the pain and the anguish alone of what these Black mothers are experiencing by having their kids out in the streets like this and being worried, and then not being able to provide for them and not having the resources to get access to things for their kids? Like, it's your job to take care of your kids and you can't, So there's a big weight on the Black female community right now. And I think they're holding up this whole movement, and no one's talking about it, it's like, and I think that's something, again, is this like lack of awareness that you know, there's women are powerful. Like women are, and it's funny because my husband, Steve, said something one time, he was like, you don't get along with men and that's your problem. I'm like, no, I don't let men tell me what I am and what I can do, and they don't like it. That's not me not getting along with men. That's me not letting men tell me who I am and what I deserve and where I belong.
And it's
And
that persona that you're meant to just get along. And, you know, you think about these beautiful women who are wanting to bring up their children and families. And like you said, you know, they come up against, you know, this roadblock and that roadblock. You can't do this and you can't do that. And it's tiring. It's like, you know, how long?
We're not taught, again, your work. We're not taught to love ourselves. We're not taught self-care. We're not taught about meditation and mindfulness and taking care of your soul self. And we're not taught any of these things, how to nourish ourselves as women, which we require.
Because that's not important.
It's not important because our job is to nourish everyone else, right?
Yes.
And so the plight of the woman itself is enormous because we create life, we have to sustain life, and we have to grow life. You know what I mean? So we have such an important role in this world. And then you add the top layer of being a Black woman trying to do that when you're literally put into a system that makes it almost impossible for you to properly care for your family unless you literally are lucky, basically. And so it's just, I think that it's, you know, I really would love to see some resources specifically concentrating on offering help and resources and opportunities to Black women through all of this. And I'm really thinking about, because I do branding and business development stuff, like how can I maybe pool some resources to get, even if I help 1 or 2 or 5 women start a small business or get a dream off the ground that they had to change their family tree and this cycle that they're in, this rat race of just, you know, getting by and really pursuing a dream, I would be happy. You know, we're not encouraged to pursue dreams as women. We're encouraged to build other people's dreams.
Well, you're an amazing example for a start. You are one of the most amazing people I know, especially in business, but also, you know, as a person, you're amazing. So I just think that just you being yourself is amazing. And if, you know, I will also put my, my word out there that, as you say, you want to help women with business, you know, I'm happy to join you and help women with, you know, spiritual connection and themselves, and, you know, because again, like, these are our strengths. And so anything you need, let me know and I will be there for you.
I love that. I love it. I think it's so important. And like the work you do, that's why I'm so happy you're doing Love for Humanity, because the work that you do, I know you know it's important, but I don't think you know how important it is, because just me personally, I know how much my life has changed and things, and my just changing the way I think and my mindset. And I think I would be stuck somewhere where I wouldn't want to be if it wasn't for the work I've been doing with you for the past 2 years. And I know that through that work, anybody can change their life, even if it's hard, even if everything is stacked against them, even if they're, you know, in this system. I know if you do the work that you can control the outcome of your life. You really can. And so I think the work that you do is so important because it gives people back their power. Definitely. And right now people are powerless. And that's, you know, that's why people are acting out, and, you know, people are saying, oh, people are rioting and looting, and like, people are powerless. This is how they react because they don't know what else to do. They feel powerless, they feel helpless. And this work gives people their power back because it makes them understand that they're in control of their life and their destiny and their thoughts and their mind. And you can literally change everything about your life with your mind. And it sounds ridiculous because someone's going to say, oh yeah, I'm in jail, how am I going to change my mind? Or I'm Black and I get, you know, accosted by the police when I go out, how is that going to change it? But the way you look at life and the way your perspective on, and just loving yourself fills you up in such a way where you can go through circumstances without being broken by them. And I think society is broken right now because we don't have the knowledge and experience and information on how to withstand those kind of things and still be whole. And I think that that's what the work that you do does. And the idea of humanity and that we're all one. And like, you won't treat somebody terribly if you are full of love and gratitude.
Oh my God. I just love that you said that, because it's exactly the vision. And it's, you know, it's the thing. And the other, the next kind of question, because I know initially we were talking about mental health, but I think it's kind of gone down the track of, you know, women are actually going to be the change makers. And, you know, I know that mental health is very important, and your experiences you've had with that has made you very passionate about it. But you can see also that you've also got that other, you know, passion for helping women. And so, you know, women, I think women is something that you are probably more passionate about, because they're the ones who will change the mental health, and that'll be the result of that. But the thing that I'm seeing, which is, you know, it's incredibly difficult to work through for a lot of people, is the reality of the world. And I think that's where white people do not see things the way that a black person would see things. And that's why this whole Black Lives Matter has been really amazing, because white people are saying, well, our lives matter too. And it's like, there's some amazing analogies and things out there to teach white people that your life isn't in danger, but all of ours is. And the thing that I've seen, maybe as a mother as well, but I can see, and also just talking to you, which you don't have to deal with a lot of the stuff that black people have to deal with on a, you know, minute by minute basis.
Yeah.
But it's very difficult for a mother to tell her black child that everything's fine in the world when it's not.
Right. Exactly.
And so, I don't know, I think, how would black women be able to change that when it's not the reality?
I feel like the one thing is, again, just speaking back from my personal experience, when your cup is empty, no one can drink from it, right? So you can't give anything. And as a mother, that's what you have to do, is you have to give. And you can't when your cup is empty. So teaching these women how to fill their cup and be whole and love themselves and cherish themselves, then they have that to give to their children. And then that changes circumstance. Love changes anything. Yeah. We know that. Love can change any situation, any circumstance. So, you know, if we empower these mothers and these women to be full with love and compassion and which
I think they already are. That's why they're so protective, you know, and I think it's...
But not for themselves. They have it for other people. And that's where women always have it for other people. You never run dry for others. You give like an endless, and all mothers, I think, of all races are like that. And you always find the strength to give, but you never find the strength to give to yourself. And that's what's missing, is because I think that, and that's what's so, why there's such this sense of being tired and oppressed, is because they're so tired of this struggle. They're so tired of like being scared for their kids when they leave out to go to a store. It's weighing and taxing on you. So I think if we find a way to mentally build up women and give them these strengths, inner strengths, and these inner powers to kind of, because for me, I know that like once I realized I had so much power over my own life, it changed everything for me. I always felt like a victim to my circumstances. And you get bitter that way. You get bitter and you start to blame and you start to feel like there's no options. This is just what the hand I've been dealt. I've heard that so many times. This is the hand I've been dealt. This is the hand I've been dealt. You know, but, you know, realizing that you are the one shuffling the cards is like everything. So I think that, and then, you know, the Black community has a lot of faith. Most of the Black community really believes in God, and they do have a lot of faith. But I think what happens in the Black community, and again, I'm not speaking for all Black people in all communities, but just the experience I've had, is that you aren't explained a relationship with God. You're told that there's this omnipresent person and it's God and he controls everything, and he, you know,
it's just another thing that controls everything.
Yeah, it's like this omnipresent being that just controls everything, but it doesn't teach you how
The relationship.
The relationship with God, and that how you have he's inside of you, and you have that power in you, and that's your father, and that's that source energy is what you call it when it comes to energy work, but that you have access to all things through this being that's like bigger than everything, because he's created everything and everything is him, and he's full of love and everything like that. So it's like, because I think in the Black community, it's like you don't question it. It's God and Jesus, and that's it. But there's no understanding in terms of what that means for you personally as an individual. So I grew up going to church, and I believed in God, and I was Christian. But when I started doing work with you, and I think there's this misunderstanding that if you believe in the universe, then you don't believe in God, and vice versa. But when you understand that one is the same and it's all the same, and then you understand the connection, the energetic connection between God and yourself, once you get that, then you understand truly how amazing a relationship with God is, and how he's full of love and abundance and grace, and then how that extends to you in your life. So regardless of whatever situation. So I think that the work that you do, and I'm so glad that you said that, if there's something that you can do, because I really think that working with Black women and women of color, to give them resources, to give them encouragement, to give them access to dream, and women are so powerful. Women can change things. And I really feel like it's going to be women that are going to make this world different. Like, I do feel like that. And I love my fellow brothers. Like, I love men. I think they've done some amazing things, but I think the women are the key. And if we can figure out how to empower our women, then that's what really will affect change. How to really empower women. And I think that work has to be really important to the Black community. And it's not. Black women of color are not considered precious, are not treasured, are not uplifted. They are there to serve, and that's it. And there's this mentality, and it probably goes back to something to do with slavery. I'm sure it does, that a woman of color is there to serve. And
what are black little girls taught when they're growing up?
Yeah, you're just taught that you just be a good girl. And actually, recently, a white man said that to me in a business meeting. Are you going to be a good girl? He said that to me. Actually, now, as a almost 40-year-old woman, I had a white 65-year-old man ask me if I was going to be a good girl in a business meeting. I'm an executive, a professional. I'm the COO of this company. I have a professional executive title. And I had a man ask me if I'm going to be a good girl. So that just gives you an idea of this like mindset that we got to be good girls, and we got to toe the line, and we have to do what's good. And in time we'll get what I give, and you'll get. Prove yourself, prove yourself, prove yourself. Women of color constantly being told they have to prove themselves because A, they're women, and B, they're colored. They're women of color. So you don't even just have to prove yourself as a woman, you have to prove yourself as a woman of color. It's twofold. And I personally experienced that. I know exactly. I've been passed up for opportunities that I'm more qualified for, smarter for, and I started making my own opportunities. I didn't wait for other people to tell me I was good enough for stuff. I would go out and do shit on my own because I wasn't going to wait anymore. And we need to empower our females of color to do that too. Don't wait for somebody to give you an opportunity. Go out and get it. Create it, and find the people, find your tribe to create it. And that's where I feel like I can help create a community of women that support each other in that way. Like lawyers, like energy workers, business, branding, whatever, and this community of women that stick together, that support each other, that offer resources, that help each other, that build together. And it's specifically in the community, women of color, because they don't have it. They have no support. And even when there's movements to support Black people, it rarely concentrates specifically on women.
Whoa.
It rarely does. You don't hear it. So even when they're a part of a bigger movement like Black Lives Matter, it's never Black women matter, right? You don't hear that. You don't hear that one time. Black women matter. Black lives matter. Black men matter. Black women, not so much.
And I know the women are not only, you know, the child bearers, but we're actually the main educators.
Yeah.
And if we want to change what's going on in the world, it starts with us, because we're teaching these children. And again, we have to be the example of self-empowerment to be able to help children to be self-empowered. And 100%, my love, whatever you need, I am here.
And I think that is the focus, because I think the thing is like, if women can do anything, if we come together and we want resources in the schools for mental health, we can do it. If we want, you know, if we want protection for our kids, if we want this, we want that, we can do it. But we're always told what we need to focus on. We're always told what's important and what needs to be important. And that's not that important right now. This is important. You need to do that. Even in business and work. I've had ideas. I've had projects I want to do. Better projects, better ideas, better everything. No, we're going to do this. We're going to do this, and you're just going to help us. And you just sit there and do what you're supposed to do and help me build up my multi-million-dollar company. And then I'll give you scraps and then whatever. And I think we need to really empower our women, and particularly our women of color, to step out and create opportunities for themselves. And don't take no for an answer. Like, I can help a woman write a business plan that can get money. I can help women figure out how to do that. Like, you know, there's things that we can do to help each other, because we have to, because we are the ones that are going to.
It is that collective thing. It's like, you know, we're talking about the world.
Yeah.
You know, we are all here to help each other. And this is where I think it's great that we can have this conversation, because it's extremely important to see it as, well, I'm listening, you know, we're listening to what needs to be done, because no one can tell anyone. Yeah, exactly. You can't. And it's like, again, like I said, we talk about journeys a lot. So everybody's journey is going to send them down a different path of how they're going to create change. But once you identify something you can do it. That's it. It doesn't matter what your neighbor's doing or what your sister's doing or what your mom's doing. But when you figure out something you can do it. And then that's how you're going to make some change. I think that COVID actually, and that's what I've seen for a lot of people, it's actually made them realize what is really important, which, you know, health, relationships, you know, and a lot of people haven't been able to work. So it's like, it made me realize how much you don't need, how much we think that society tells us we need certain things, but we don't actually need them to be happy and healthy and well. Yeah. And so what we need to be happy, healthy, and well is love and compassion and to that time for a self, being together, sharing those experiences. And I think that's, you know, that's actually the main focus. And that's what I've seen through this year has been such a tumultuous year, but it's actually helping us to see what's really important. You know, what I've noticed is that the things that we never thought were important are the most important. Yeah, definitely. And we've been going down this pathway of this is more important, forgetting about this, and then wondering why everything's wrong. Yeah, it is. It's perfect timing, actually, that this revolution happened. I don't think it's by accident. It's by design. And if you do believe in God, then you have to know that this whole moment is God-given, because the fact that we were literally locked in our homes and stopped, everything stopped, every distraction stopped. Yeah. And all we had was ourselves, to look at ourselves and be with ourselves and talk to ourselves, and then this moment happened that needed to be seen. It's not by accident. Not at all. It's like, I think everyone's feeling that way too, how divine this moment is, and like whether you like it or you don't like it or this or that, everyone's feeling it across the whole world. I haven't seen a moment where the whole world has felt something the way it is. So if you didn't think we were united as a whole world, you definitely see it now. There's things going on in Australia, the same shit's going on here, the same shit's going on in France. And like, you know, so that's not by accident. That really just shows you how we are all one, how we can move in a movement of one, and how we can change as one. And that's the work that you do. And that's why I think it's super important, because I mean, it's weird that I went my whole life without knowing the stuff that you teach. And it's astounding. Me too. Like, it's so crazy. Like,
It's like literally shocking. And again, to go back to the idea of the schools, and I know we talked about this, but there has to be a change in the curriculum. This education hasn't changed for years and years and years and years, but the world has.
I think, and this is where, you know, you talk about the self-empowerment and everything else, and we all know that all these things do need to change. But like you said, when we do the self-empowerment, self-care, self-love, and to be honest, I'm seeing a lot of self-care and self-love actually being renamed into self-acceptance. And I find that love and care is after acceptance. And so I think acceptance is probably the next step. I don't know, but I think it's really important that, you know, it's almost like the rubbish is, you know, all the stupidity of humanity has come to the surface because we need to see it.
Yeah.
And if someone hasn't seen it, you need to look at it and ask more questions, because this is where things need to change. And, you know, the thing that is upsetting is when you see, you know, things like what's happened recently happening in so many centuries before, or not centuries, but decades before, you know, there's been so many...
it's been going on.
It's been going on top, but I keep getting the message, this needs to be the last time.
Yeah, this is it. I think it is too. I think that this is it. Like, you know, there's no more not seeing it. And that's what's different this time because of social media, because of we are connected worldwide now, because of globalization. There's no not seeing it. There's no like, oh, I didn't pick up the paper, so I didn't know. There's no you cannot not see it. There's nobody in this world that doesn't know what's going on. Like, so because you can't you can't unsee what you're seeing, you have to face what you're seeing. However you do it is individual, but no one can not look at what's happening in the world and see it. Like, it's not possible not to see what's going on. And so that there's just this reckoning that's happening right now. And I think again, it's the women that are going to make the change, and it's the mothers that are going to make the change for their kids. And that's just what it is. And it's going to be that. And we need to empower our women of color to really be strong, because it's hard. Their plight is hard. When I think about the single moms and the community that they're literally climbing up a mountain by themselves with their children on their back. Like, that is the analogy of a Black mom in this country. And it is almost insurmountable. And then you wonder why, you know, they can't.
And that feeling of not being helped by anybody. You're alone. This is it. This is what your life is. But then also taught that this is just what it is and you have to accept it. Like, no, you don't. No, you don't have to accept it. That's not all that's there. And there's people here to help you. And we're together and we're a community and we're going to lift you up and we're going to get you where you need to go. And we're going to help you. Like, it's so, and again, like I said, if I help 2 people or 5 people, and those 5 people help 5 people, and those 5 people help 5 people, then it's a domino effect. So it doesn't mean you have to help every single Black mom or every single Black woman in the world. But if you help one, that one can help one. And that's how it's going to change, you know? So it's exactly what I was showing. Like, I was showing 5 years ago, the way the world will change is through, it looks like a multi-level marketing system. And I'm like, but it's exactly one person helps another person, helps another person, helps another person. And I think, you know, it's extremely important for everyone to step up.
Yeah, everybody has to. It's the moment. And like, whatever it is, however it is, whatever you're called to do that.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you have to do everything that everyone else is doing. You're called to do stuff. Everybody in this moment is called to do something.
Exactly.
So, whatever.
And I like how you said it doesn't need to be the same as everyone else's. And I think you've explained perfectly exactly, you know, even though you're not out there, you know, protesting and what have you, you still have a vision for what you want to change and what you want to see.
Yeah, exactly. And everybody can make a change and do something right now to, like, even again, if it's just one person, sorry, I'm plugging my phone in because it's dying. Even if it's one person, my phone's like, shut up, Stephanie. You know, even if it's just one person you're helping, like I said, it doesn't matter because there's a domino effect. So helping one person is helping 1,000 people, really. Yeah. So whatever you can do, whatever it is that you're called to do, and everybody right now has a calling, because everybody is being called to answer to this moment.
Definitely.
Everybody.
And I've also been showing that everyone has guidance as well as to what that calling is, and you use that, those inner feelings, whatever you're passionate about.
Yeah.
Whatever you're passionate about, whatever you're angry about, whatever it is, that's what you're meant to be doing.
And we just spent 3 months figuring that out because we were alone and just thinking about what's important to us. So we just spent 3 months in isolation figuring out what's important to us.
Hopefully that's what most people did, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. I know. Well, and exactly. And again, it's everybody's journey, right? So, but I think there's definitely something, and I really want to empower Black women really through all of this, because just like there's so much burden. Yeah. I mean, it's so much, and yes, it's the mostly primarily Black men that are being, targeted by the police and things like that. And but as a mother, if the pain of a mother experiencing what they're experiencing, what happened to their child is it takes my breath away, because I think about my Nico and the idea of, a police officer kneeling on his throat and murdering him in broad daylight. And it literally makes me want to throw up. It makes me sick to my stomach. So this is what these Black mothers are experiencing. So these men are being hunted down and they're being murdered and their lives are being taken away from them. But these mothers are losing their children. And this is something that it's just heartbreaking. And these mothers need to be uplifted and taken care of because they're broken. So,
and just knowing when their children are going out that they're going to come home.
Yeah, like that fear, that constant fear. And like I said, it weighs on you. And I know that from the mental health struggle when I went with my daughter. You get tired. You're tired. And if you don't know how to fill yourself back up and re-energize yourself, then you just can't cope. Life just breaks you. And so I think that just having these resources, and I don't know if it's like a website or a group, or I have to think about the format or what to do.
Well, I feel like we'll be talking a little bit more about this. We didn't really know that it would go down this avenue, but obviously there was a bigger picture at hand here. So I think we will continue to talk about this because, you can definitely see that there's passions in what we've talked about that need to be dealt with. So we can extend, and it's probably not the last time that we'll actually have this conversation in another spiel. So, well, thank you so much for sharing everything with me. Is there anything else that you want to share before we finish off today?
Just that I love you. Oh. And I wish everybody in the world just needs to meet Kim, and then everything will be fine.
Well, I really wanted this to be about you, and I wanted to listen to you and listen to, I know that I'm very lucky to get to see you as often as I do, but, I wanted to hear from your point of view because I'm not you, and it's really interesting to listen. I think it's really important for all of us to listen and acknowledge that everyone doesn't have the same life. And everyone experiences things differently. And I think that's what we need to do as part of humanity, is we need to just listen.
And have some empathy. I mean, there's such a lack of empathy, putting yourself in other people's shoes and trying to just understand what it's like to be that person.
Do you know what? I don't think, and it would be great if we could, but this is what white privilege is all about. We will never understand, and we have to just zip it. Kim. Zip
and listen, right?
Listen, and I think from what I've received in the work that I do, acknowledging, because I keep going to write understand, but we will never understand. We can probably try and visualize what it would be like, go into past lives. I don't know, but at the end of the day, when you don't live the same life and in fear and everything else, you can't turn around and tell someone, you just need to do this.
Right,
It's not that easy. And so what I've been showing is that listening and acknowledging, and then it takes you into another journey. So I'm open to listen and acknowledge to, you know, to you, Steph, and to anyone else that wants to share their story, because this is how we're going to start moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely. It's just listening, and you're right. It is impossible to really understand.
I keep wanting to say, I wanted to say and understand, but it never felt right. And this is the thing, we would never understand. We could probably imagine. Imagine is the closest, but we need to acknowledge that we will never understand what it's like.
Yeah.
And we need to acknowledge that.
And then I feel encouraged that everybody's moved right now. I think it's like things that feel different. It feels like really big. And I feel happy for the generation, like our kids. Like I feel, because the world's going to be different for them.
Yeah, it is.
And I'm excited because I think they are also different. Like our kids are different. They're not like us. That's when real change is going to happen, is when this next generation is the ones that are going to make the decisions and they're already changing stuff. A lot of the people in the forefront of this movement are young people. Like, you know, you see these kids. I saw this 7-year-old girl protesting. I sent you the video. She's like, no justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. And she's 7. And she was so fierce. And I'm like, look at that passion in that 7-year-old kid. Like,
because she's not quiet. Before they would be quiet and not be told not to speak up.
And this generation is not going to be silenced. And I think we're really going to see something different come in the next generation of people.
Super exciting. And it's, you know, I know that you said, you know, you don't really know what your role is, but I think you do. You definitely do, my love. I mean, you've pretty much said it. You've nailed it. And now it's time for action. So as I said, anything you need.
Okay. I'm going to work on it.
Anything you need, I'm always here. Yeah. Thank you for chatting with me. Hang on the line and we'll have a bit of a chat after. But I think we're going to be doing this a little bit more again whenever we're guided to have a bit more of a chat. It's really important to have these conversations. And I think also for you personally, it was great to really nail exactly your next steps.
Yeah, what I want to do, and like focusing on women of color, because women of color are the ones that need it. Like that's where my footwork's going to be. I know it.
I know this is kind of a little bit personal, and I won't say anything specific, but also remember the project that you were talking about a while ago with your sister.
Oh yeah, exactly
the same.
Exactly that.
It's not a coincidence that it's the same thing.
Yeah, no, not at all. There's that
wink, wink
quilt that weaves us together.
Well, thank you, my love, and hang on the line and we'll have a bit of a chat afterwards, and we'll definitely do this again because I think it's really important to continue the conversation.
Yeah, thank you for letting me do this.
Oh my God, thank you. Thanks, darling.